Suddenly, St. Lucians were naturally and rightfully so clamoring to be involved at all levels.
We got quite a bit of flack in the first year, spending this money and what we're going to make it back.
It was very hard to convince St. Lucians that this was a good thing.
Are we getting a return for that dollar?
Most of the people never heard of St. Lucia.
We needed to bump up the name of St. Lucia in the marketplace.
The atmosphere is what sold it for me the first year, without a doubt.
Certain people became quite concerned that they might lose their grip or their stranglehold, if you want to use that term.
Let the people participate. Let the masses participate.
I didn't sense anxiety, I got a lot of enthusiasm.
It's one of the wonderful things about me coming into the region is that I was able to come in and share the knowledge that I have.
As with 1979, 1992 is indelibly inscribed in our history. Each date unlocked a remarkable St. Lucian journey.
It's a moment we've been waiting for all our lives. It's the day when they shall be free.
1979 heralded St. Lucia's independence as a sovereign nation. It was also the year in which Sir Arthur Lewis brought home the Nobel Prize for Economics. In 1992 came a second Nobel Prize, Sir Derek Walcott, for literature. And St. Lucia launched what is today the Caribbean's longest-running internationally subscribed festival. The St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival is today another iconic St. Lucian brand alongside our world-famous pitons and global distinction as the highest producer of Nobel winners per capita to date. The silver anniversary of the island's largest and best-known cultural event truly exemplifies an independent and proficient people who have earned their slot on the international festival calendar as producers of world-class events. In the early 1990s, the potential of tourism as St. Lucia's economic mainstay was apparent, yet hamstrung by limited airlift. Government needed to convince American Airlines to consider a direct flight into St. Lucia, save for one small problem. There was very little buzz about St. Lucia in the American marketplace. American Airlines executive Horace Horde suggested creating a high-profile event with resonance in key U.S. markets.
He practically said that this was a necessity. We needed to bump up the name of St. Lucia in the marketplace, and one of the quickest ways to do so, through his experience, was doing an event.
The internal champion of that proposal was Alan Chasney, then director of the St. Lucia Tourist Board. The uphill task of convincing his cabinet colleagues that St. Lucia needed a jazz festival fell to the Minister for Tourism, Romanus Lansico, now deceased.
If he had said no to this, it wouldn't have happened because, as you know, the tourist board was completely financed by the government of St. Lucia.
He himself, Lansico himself, in Parliament and so on, got quite a bit of flack even from his own party. Everybody was not on board, as you would have thought by what they say today. It was a bit of a fight the first year.
So the festival, what it did was it provided a PR legs for us, and we were able to go to radio stations, go to ethnic groups, go to television stations, and all different types of media who would not have considered looking at St. Lucia in the past.
The idea was eventually green-lighted, but the public was skeptical.
It was very hard to convince St. Lucians that this was a good thing. But frankly, the focus was not on pleasing St. Lucia, but doing what was good for St. Lucia at the time.
People like Alan Chasney also felt that we had to differentiate our product. We couldn't simply be sea and sand. And deceased Romanus Lansico bought into that we were doing something that would make St. Lucia stand out. So that when you said the St. Lucia Jazz Festival, the first thing we said was St. Lucia.
Companies like Cable and Wireless, for example, they operate on an international stage, so they understood the value of this. The hotels as well, St. Lucia is not their market. So they know that to be out there internationally, you can't but do what's right.
Sunshine, blue seas, white sails, gentle breeze. Oh, there's something special in the air.
Come to American Airlines Caribbean.
American Airlines had just hosted a successful music festival in the British Virgin Islands. Horace Horde recommended that St. Lucia engage Paxton Baker of PKB Entertainment and Karen Joyner, who were involved in entertainment marketing.
Producing a festival of that magnitude required quite a lot of resources that we had to get from outside, lighting, even a simple thing as a stage, just all the production facilities that support it.
Fortunately, resident on island was musician Jean Lawrence, a former head of Trinidad and Tobago's Pan Jazz Festival.
I don't think St. Lucia had anybody who was involved in a festival of that nature before. So I became chairman.
We're here at the 2012 Soul Train Awards with Paxton Baker, the Executive Vice President and General Manager of Centric.
I must say Paxton Baker, in terms of the links that he had to the artist, that industry, he made a significant contribution.
He had his finger in the pie up there. He had done quite a lot of work with jazz festivals in other countries and other islands. And so he assisted us in getting the various artists together.
We were anxious all the time, and we would do checks and rechecks and spot checks. And then we got it down to a science that, 3 weeks in advance, this piece of equipment has to be in St. Lucia. 2 weeks before, these are the things that are required. So I think planning and project management was a skill that we had to learn, on our own.
We had a very large committee, actually, 19 of us, dealing with food and tents and different logistics for this site,
Realistically, we had no venue. And in fact, because we had no choice, Pigeon Island became a signature venue.
And although Pigeon Island was deemed the ideal venue for the inaugural St. Lucia Jazz Festival, it lacked the infrastructure needed for an event of international standing.
The fact that there was no electricity, there was no water, there was nothing at Pigeon Island. It meant that every single day we had to plan. There was nothing you could not have overlooked anything.
Hosting an international jazz festival was coming at significant cost. That would eventually be shared by government and major sponsors, Cable and Wireless, with Keith Compton, a jazz lover, as its point person. Horace Horde also convinced American Airlines to invest in the inaugural festival.
With these two big sponsors, it became possible.
The first notes of that inaugural show were struck by Joe Sample and Bobby Watson at the National Cultural Center. Day one on main stage featured Luther Francois and Inaugural and the West Indies Jazz Band. Day two showcased Arturo Tapin, Tim Cunningham and Winton Marsalis, but it was Tim Cunningham who perhaps created the biggest impact.
And he jumped down into the audience, and could hear him perfectly still and wandered through the crowd. Oh, he had them in thrills, man.
He did a really great set. I mean, he came back one other time, he was on the square, but that first time, it was just a really, really nice affair. And he came down off the stage, he spent a lot of time just playing in the crowd, sitting with different families and playing with them. And it was just a very, very pleasant feeling, the whole thing.
A few days later, Tim Cunningham would endorse St. Lucia as a honeymoon destination by getting married in a simple garden ceremony at La Toc Hotel. Absorbing all of this from a close vantage was Ronald Buhingson. Curiously, he had not yet found international acclaim, and his music was not yet Googleable. So his support that first year was as the board's liaison to road managers of the visiting artists.
The people who were on board, the non-St. Lucians who were on board, didn't know I was a musician. I just never told them anything, because I just wanted to see this thing happen. So I was in charge of the roadies. I'd have to get out of my bed early in the morning, go pick up the guys, make sure they get there to set up everything, And I did that for like 2 years.
Luckily for us, BET came into the picture, and that was a major plus for us, you know.
And thankfully, with the support of American Airlines, we had access to key media. BET also was a key ingredient. The fact that they had a television station, the fact that they were able to access the right media channels, it really helped initially.
So interestingly enough, the first year that I came down for St. Lucia Jazz, I didn't come to work. I came with one of the talent, Alex Buño. Now, I knew Paxton, and I told him if ever he needed help, let me know. So as it turned out, the guy that was supposed to be his production manager couldn't make it. So he called me 2 o'clock in the morning. I was staying at the Windjammer, I'll never forget. He said, yo, man, I'm going to need you first thing in the morning to give me a hand. We brought BET in to cover it. And after a couple of years, they got more involved in the whole festival, shooting it, promoting it, airing it. They offered Paxton a job. They bought his company and offered him a job, and he went in and became a senior executive.
The tourist board recognized the benefit of it, and I think then the powers that be at the time, the politicians then realized, look, this is a good thing, because the hotels were quite filled that first year.
I didn't sense anxiety, I got a lot of enthusiasm, because I think the response in the first year shocked everybody. It was so good that everybody had the sense we are onto something. And there was a lot of enthusiasm, there was a lot of energy, and there was a lot of goodwill.
In short time, the rest of the Caribbean took note. Regional attendance grew. Other Caribbean islands sought to emulate the St. Lucia Jazz Festival.
It became almost fashionable to have an annual jazz festival.
Against the background of a successful and expanding jazz festival was a growing concern about the cost of the event, return on taxpayers' investments, and unequal allocation of resources to homegrown cultural events. It was a recurring discomfort for organizers.
And it was always a question at the back of people's minds, are we getting a return for that dollar? The second area of contention had to do with the spending on the jazz festival vis-a-vis spending on Carnival.
The St. Lucia Tourist Board responded by focusing on the development side of the festival. It introduced workshops which sought to connect the performing arts fraternities with visiting professionals. More St. Lucians appeared on festival stages island-wide, yet the lingering concerns over value for taxpayers' money and remuneration persisted.
I still don't think we have satisfactorily responded. And in my mind, I sometimes wonder whether there is a response, because I ask myself, is it an either or? Is it a jazz or carnival? Couldn't we make it both?
Nice to meet you.
So I started back in 1995 as the research officer, looking at the impact of the festival on St. Lucia.
The festival needed some new energy, and we had even considered changing to a blues and gospel festival at one stage, because as you probably know, blues and gospel are a really larger audience than jazz. But we didn't do that, it didn't happen.
Give it to me.
By 1995, efforts were intensified to measure the festival's impact and evaluate the product in terms of experience and economics.
We tried to identify what were the expectations of visiting St. Lucia during the Jazz Festival, and we interviewed them on departure, and we poll them on the same questions to see were those expectations met, were they, superseded, and where were their deficiencies. And we incorporated all of that into the planning and development of the festival.
From an economic perspective, it met the objectives of extending the winter seasons through to the end of May. This meant high occupancy at hotels in St. Lucia. This, in turn, impacted the wider community.
The Jazz Festival, sort of in its early iteration, caused a lot more expenditure outside of the hotel plant. So it was not just sustaining employment, creating higher revenues to the hotel sector, but it now started to develop into on-island expenditure away from the hotel. And these were some of the preliminary movements we saw as a result of the festival.
What was most encouraging was the support of the wider Caribbean, in particular northern neighbors Martinique.
We had a currency difference, and it gave us legs in that market that we were not able to penetrate. And to this day, I think the Jazz Festival is largely responsible for the strength we have of the arrivals from the French departments. It's a tradition that has remained, for a long time, which did not exist prior to the festival.
What made the St. Lucia Jazz Festival quite unique was the continuous product enhancement and the resultant mix of experiences that it offered patrons, with fringe events adding to its diversity.
And you had different types of jazz. You had Caribbean African, in some of the outer districts, or what we used to call the fringe events. Then you had the straight ahead jazz at the cultural center, which was for the jazz purists, and that was attractive, And then you had the Pigeon Island venue.
In 1996, St. Lucia Jazz Festival offered yet another exciting novelty, this time in the island's south. Laboe Promotions, comprising 4 individuals committed to the promotion of the arts in the south, compelled the attention of the St. Lucia Tourist Board. They had been hosting theatrical productions and music concerts, including jazz expositions at a decommissioned cinema in Laboe years prior to the St. Lucia Jazz Festival. Laboe Promotions, led by Yves Renard, held discussion with Agnes Francis of the St. Lucia Tourist Board and Desmond Skeet, chairman of the festival lineup committee.
He was extremely encouraging, and actually he also was instrumental for that first concert in making sure that the band would perform and negotiating a small grant, which was the first sponsorship we got from SLASPA. SLASPA was the original sponsor. SLASPA sponsored Jazz in the South since 1996. Anybody who has been to the Balambush concerts in the early 2000s, all the way to 2005, would know that the crowd in Balambush included many people from other Caribbean islands. So, Jazz in the South was actually extending the duration of the festival in terms of activities, but in terms of attracting visitors and patrons to the festival.
In the ensuing years, Laboe Promotions would handle shows from Soufriere to Vieux-Fort, sometimes 5 shows in less than a week.
First of all, we start up in Balambush, then we go down to Soufriere, and then we come back to Laboe, and then we go to Vieux-Fort. And all that, and I should tell you, that was during the time of the construction of the West Coast Road. So if you imagine us driving through Fonce-Jacques at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, hauling equipment all that time, because we had to get it back to Vieux-Fort or Laboe to get it set up the following day.
Josephine, a Goka player from Guadeloupe, came to me and told me, Yves, I don't think you realize what you guys are doing. Because for him it was extremely important, because they never had the opportunity. They never had the opportunity to perform outside Guadeloupe, Martinique or France. And they never had the opportunity to meet with people from Dominica or Barbados or St. Lucia. So that sort of Caribbean exchange was, so the concept then became very clear.
1997 heralded further product diversification as the St. Lucia Jazz Festival continued to evolve. Minister of Tourism of the day, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, wanted to see full inclusion so that the festival's benefits would be available to all.
Let the people participate. Let the masses participate. Let the vendors sell. Let the people understand that, listen, this thing is for visitors, but it's also for us too.
The high-profile opening of jazz was taken to the Minder Phillip Park for the first time. To date, it has become the only main stage event which can be considered self-sustaining.
First of all, it's a show that makes a profit in terms of dollars and cents, and it's become a calendar event. It's one of the biggest shows in the country as far as music is concerned, and people are involved. So it has happened without any serious mishaps. In fact, the venue probably is becoming a little stretched in terms of the crowd, and I'm very happy it's happening.
Like his predecessor, Mr. Pierre also had to make a strong case in the Parliament for his proposal, but eventually he won the hearts and minds of his cabinet colleagues.
And I want to really thank the Prime Minister who accepted the idea and supported me, and the entire cabinet. I want to really thank them for buying into the idea, but it took some convincing, a little more than convincing sometimes, but it happened.
2013 heralded a major milestone that further anchored the festival as a catalyst for the proliferation of St. Lucia's creative product. An audit of the festival experience and brand would result in the introduction of an arts component.
Jazz, like a river of creation, fusing minds, bodies, fingers together in a deep river of meaning that jazz is deep like a bass note in your chest, rolling waves of music moving like a mass of color, coloring a sea of rhythmic energy washing over all around you, me in a brilliant, bold, meaningful jazz.
The prior consolidation of the ministerial portfolios of tourism, culture and creative industries, with Honorable Lorne Theophilus at the helm, had already created the ideal institutional framework in which the St. Lucia Tourist Board and the Cultural Development Foundation could actively partner to explore synergies to broaden the creative sector's market network and enhance the export readiness of our cultural and creative products. And so, the St. Lucia Jazz Festival was rebranded as the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival.
There was a time when one of its primary objectives was to bring visitors to the destination. That has expanded into greater economic impacts, and we've now incorporated, giving the festival some new life, because it had actually waned over 20 years, and we sort of give it new life by incorporating the arts as a platform for showcasing talent and developing the creative industries, given the broader mandate of the ministry under which we fall.
Every aspect of the arts program, literary and spoken word, music, fashion, dance, film and theatre, carries an educational component with opportunities to network with industry experts. Students are also embraced within this ecosystem to secure, celebrate and multiply the legacy of those who have blazed the trail.
One shot to the second, one shot to the third note. Like tabba-dubby-dubba-dubby, tabba-dubby, 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 tabba. And the second time around, ba-do-dubby, ba-do-dubby, ba-do-dubby. Third time around, ba-do-dubby, da-da-da-da. And the fourth time, ba-do-dubby, ba-do-dubby. And now, when you finish doing all that, you have to do it like in a row.
Sitting in my posh, rockin' Lagash, and the girls got the goshy dosh. Sitting in my posh, rockin' Lagash, and the girls got the goshy dosh. Let me see your runway walk. Show me your runway walk.
Another enthralling innovation of the rebranded festival is St. Lucia Haute Couture. Its impact has been catalytic in energizing the domestic fashion sector nationally and propelling it beyond.
It is now attracting attention from outside. Let that be a gateway for them to be exposed to the outside world, regional and international possibly.
The sponsors did not hesitate to capitalize on the event, convinced of its promise from year one.
If we didn't have sponsors for that first year, it wouldn't have happened. And I think, the first 2 to 3 years, the sponsors were absolutely critical in getting the festival off the ground and making it, sort of continuing it in the first few years.
Sponsors stayed with the event because they felt a sense of ownership and appreciation as the St. Lucia Tourist Board involved them throughout the planning and execution stages. Sponsors were happy to associate with the event, which evolved and grew in stature.
Heineken, one of our key brands, remains the original sponsor, the only original sponsor of the St. Lucia Jazz Festival. And it's ready to align an international brand, an international premium brand, to what we consider to be an international premium event.
I mean, for us, it's a big pleasure to see that you contributing to an event, contributing to a festival, and every year there's growth.
As the festival began to attract, ironically, more popular artists, I think St. Lucians began to identify a little more with it, because certainly they were seeing the kind of artists that they identify with, that they long to see, that some of them long to be.
The St. Lucia Jazz Festival matured, and with it, continued calls for greater aspects of the production to be handled locally. Black Entertainment Television BET and its production facility continued to produce the festival. Slowly but surely, local capacity was being developed and positioned to assume greater responsibility for key aspects of the production.
People began to feel a sense of ownership, which brought people to attend, to participate in those events more than they previously did.
It took too long for our people to excel or to become competent at doing some of these things that we paid a lot of money to do.
Suddenly, St. Lucians were naturally and rightfully so clamoring to be involved at all levels, not simply as sort of support for the US staff.
The process of building capacity and providing opportunities in production had begun much earlier, during the initial years of the festival.
And so, we've done sets for Shaka Khan, and we've done lighting for George Benson, and we've done, the support for international names that we would not have had an opportunity to do unless jazz had come to St. Lucia.
Sound production companies invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment, and other entities in stage infrastructure, lighting, and set design and construction. But it took a while for production to be handled locally.
The role of, say, BET as the international support mechanism for the festival, getting it out there into markets in New York and Atlanta and particularly North America, somehow became diluted, at least from the perspective of us who are not in the center of the thing, and so they became more local producers and less of the international purveyors for the festival. I think that was a mistake. I think we really should have increasingly found ways for the festival to grow with the production capacity that it was engendering in the country.
Cognizant of the need for transfer of skills and knowledge, the St. Lucia Tourist Board had encouraged an atmosphere of mentorship and partnership between BET and local production entities.
And what it has done is that through that mentorship and through that partnership, we have seen a number of production companies in St. Lucia who have actually moved on, up their game to match that international standard.
It's one of the wonderful things about me coming into the region is that I was able to come in and share the knowledge that I have and give people ideas. And so I've been able to tell people, I say, hey, look, I can't do it, but I'm telling you, there's a need for this. You might want to consider doing this as a business. So and I've done that in different countries and different islands. I've got people started in a business. renting stages or renting tents, sound, different things that they got involved in that they now make a living doing.
In fact, right now, I think the balance is tilted. The US production element is pretty much gone. We still have a regional involvement, which is good, but the local involvement in the production dimension has expanded tremendously.
Do they eat with them? Do they walk with them? Do they eat with them? Do they walk with them?
And that has expanded as the capacity and the competence has grown. And that has grown working vis-a-vis PKB and these guys, with Derek and the guys, working alongside them. The fellas were able to pick up very quickly and demand very quickly that right now, okay, we're ready. So let us in to that door.
In fact, I remember working closely with Arthur Tisson on sound. We did lighting. The stage cover and the stage were all provided locally. And I think at that point, certain people became quite concerned that they might lose their grip or their stranglehold, if you want to use that term. And from our perspective, there appeared to be a redoubling of efforts to, hey, these local guys are getting a little bit too competent. And there seemed to be a sort of a struggle to regain the ground. And I think that was unfortunate because we should have found a better division of labor so that the festival could become more indigenized more quickly.
And it has always been an ambition to transition to that level. And in 2015, we finally achieved it, to be able to produce the main stage events at Pigeon Island, and that was managed by a local outfit.
If you're waiting for the moment, here it is. If you're aiming for the hard thing, you can't miss. Let's go. Lucia, where's the love? Where's the love? Come on, everybody, let's go.
Lessons from the past 2 decades reinforce the need for policies clearly articulating processes and timelines for knowledge and skill transfer. There continues to be an urgent need for capacity building.
25 years later, to have a festival where we still have certain things, ingredients that we are not able to do on our own and supply on our own, it meant that we needed to take a lot more project-oriented approach to planning this thing and say, okay, this is we see this as a developmental tool. Initially, it was just a marketing tool, but it can provide avenues to grow certain skills in different areas. And artists, attracting new artists, negotiating with artists, and that's area of the business. I don't think it's developed enough.
What has happened, for example, in the sound sector, sound reinforcement industry in St. Lucia, is a lot of people have invested in equipment. And so you have 3, 4, 5 reasonably competent sound companies. But there has not been a commensurate investment in the engineering side of it, in the technical side of it. And that is affecting the quality of work that we do generally.
Will you sing with me, family? Family, will you sing with me? Boy, no, 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 no.
In 2015, Magic Circle International MCE of St. Lucia was the sole contractor awarded to provide sound engineering services for the entire festival. But this was just the beginning.
What we would like to see is that other companies provide more of the services and therefore generate more local revenue that people can gain more economically from the festival itself. We would like to see that happen. So that now we expect companies to want to invest in production equipment and so on. They may want to compete with MC sounds. And so I don't see us going back, I see us going forward in terms of absorbing more and more local participation.
And this is why sometimes competition is good. Hadn't it not been for seeing that level of production and the demands of it, I don't know that MC sounds would have stepped it up to that level. And they must be commended. That a St. Lucian outfit can handle that whole huge undertaking is commendable.
In keeping with the philosophy of taking jazz to the people, the St. Lucia Tourist Board has played a key role in ensuring that no matter where the shows are held, the patrons receive a quality experience.
It is the Tourist Board's responsibility to ensure that in terms of all the standards, that the standards are met, all your NEMO requirements, to make sure that in terms of the festival, you're not doing a community event your way. It has to be, once you're endorsed by the Tourist Board, it has to be of a particular standard.
The local media would play a critical role in promoting the event and increasing local buy-in and global visibility. The Voice newspaper, the St. Lucia Star, the Wave Radio, and Helen television systems pioneered local media coverage of St. Lucia Jazz Festival. Today, emoji, emoticons, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram dominate the media landscape and language. These virtual arenas are the space of choice to congregate and communicate for the festival's potential patrons. Logically, the bulk of the festival's promotions budget goes to social media marketing.
And you have to be across all platforms. So if somebody moves from a PC to a laptop, and a laptop to a tablet to a smartphone, that same information has to be there.
25 years ago, this did not exist. Back then, artists were judged on record sales, airplay, and Billboard rankings. Today, their popularity is based on likes, their legions of online followers, and social activism.
At the end of the day, it boils down to facts, going onto the Billboard charts, checking who is trending. That's a fact. We can't debate that in that forum, so you come with your facts. We go into YouTube, we look at how performances, who is a very good recording artist, but when they're out there live, it falls flat. So these are the little things that we look at before we make a decision. Who has all of the followers? Who, when they tweet and they say they're coming to St. Lucia, how many people are they actually reaching? And actually, what is our return on our investment as it pertains to their selection? So these are things that we look at now.
Oh, baby, yes I do. I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know what to do if I don't want you tired. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, baby.
It is 2016. The 25th anniversary of the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival is being celebrated, and with it, all the achievements of the festival, including the growth of local production entities. St. Lucian music, art, culture, and creativity are now the primary focus of the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival.
I think performing in the festival gave me a stature that would have taken me far longer to develop. Because even when I did the Jazz in the Sun with BET, I mean, the amount of exposure I got in the US was phenomenal.
And I know sometimes there's a bit of belly aching about how we didn't take enough. But what I can say is that I know in the discussions at the Tourist Board, there's a deep commitment to expand on the participation of artists, local artists in the festival. So I see in the immediate future that more and more of that is going to happen.
There is no greater economic injection or impact or stimulus in the 12-month cycle of a year that is happening other than what the Jazz Festival brings. And I think it's a recognition of that importance that has caused the festival to exist that long.
Don't stop, don't stop, don't you stop, don't stop, don't stop, don't you stop. I said Black Daddy, 3 times, Black Daddy, 4 times, 3 times, 4 times, 3 times, 1 time.
It has been an unforgettable journey. Today, St. Lucia enjoys an enviable ranking as a visitor destination globally. Now, with a heightened focus on looking inward and multiplying the festival's benefits through the propulsion of our creative exports, another exciting journey has clearly begun.
the fly lady scream!
Talk to him, Lamar.
That part.
Come on! Tell him something, Cameron.